My name is Lin Mo, and I've been reborn. Reborn exactly 7 days before the apocalypse. In my past life, a bizarre rainstorm poured for 7 days and 7 nights straight. The city's drainage system completely collapsed, and the water levels skyrocketed. The lower floors were swallowed first, followed by the subways and highways. In the end, even buildings over a dozen stories high turned into isolated islands. I survived for half a month on a few boxes of instant noodles, but eventually, just for a single bottle of water. My own neighbors pushed me off the roof, sending me plummeting into the muddy floodwaters. That bone-chilling despair, I never want to go through that again. My phone buzzed with a weather alert. It showed partly cloudy turning to sunny for the next week. I scoffed coldly. Nobody knew that behind this calm weather hid a disaster that would swallow the entire city. I immediately threw off the covers and jumped out of bed. I dug out all the bank cards and cash in the house. It totaled less than 200,000. That's not a lot for the apocalypse, but it's enough to fund our initial prep. You're awake, son. Hurry up and wash your face for breakfast. Mom made your favorite soy milk and fried dough sticks. Her voice echoed from the kitchen. Filled with that familiar, comforting warmth, I sprinted toward the sound. I hugged her shoulders tightly, feeling her warm body and real, steady breathing. My eyes instantly welled up with tears. In my previous life, during that massive flood, Mom tried to protect me and got her leg crushed by some floating debris. She didn't survive long after that, trapped in the freezing cold and starving. This time, I'll fight with my life to keep them safe. Mom, I have something incredibly important to tell you and Dad. You have to believe me. For the next 7 days, we're going to get hit by a catastrophic rainstorm like nothing you've ever seen. The floods will swallow the entire city. We have to start stockpiling supplies right now. We need to find an absolutely safe place to hide. Mom just stood there, stunned. She reached out and felt my forehead. Silly kid, did you have a nightmare? The weather forecast clearly says it's going to be sunny all week. Where is this crazy storm coming from? I knew words alone wouldn't convince her. She wasn't going to believe me easily. I turned around and marched over to the balcony. I pointed at the old neighborhood not far away. Mom, mark my words. In 3 days, the first floor of those apartments will start flooding. In 5 days, the water will rise all the way to the 3rd floor. In 7 days, the water levels will rise past the 10th floor. If I'm lying to you, I'll do all the housework for an entire year. I'll do it all. You can punish me however you want. I stared at her, completely serious, without a shred of hesitation. The smile slowly faded from my mom's face. She started to look uncertain. And right at that moment, Dad walked in from his morning workout, carrying a bag of fresh groceries. I immediately repeated everything I had just said. Dad frowned, staying totally silent for a moment. He knew I'd always been level-headed since I was a kid. I never made claims unless I was absolutely sure. Lin Mo never spouts nonsense. If he's this certain about it, let's trust him on this. Dad set the groceries down, his voice firm and decisive. Just tell us what you need us to do. Now that I had my parents backing me up, I immediately laid out the plan. Our top priority was stockpiling food, water, and medicine. Next, we needed to find a penthouse-safe house on a high floor, preferably with its own water and power supply. Finally, we had to get weapons and tools to defend ourselves against the darkness of human nature once society collapsed. I immediately dialed up a real estate agent, my voice frantic and rushed. I need to rent a penthouse duplex in a luxury downtown building. And I need to move in today, no exceptions. Budget is no object, just make sure the house is sturdy enough. Good view, and ideally, off-grid water and power. The moment the agent heard I was willing to pay extra, he agreed right on the spot. With our housing situation sorted, the 3 of us drove straight to the biggest supermarket in town. We didn't hesitate for a second, rushing right into the non-perishables and daily essentials aisles. Instant noodles, survival rations, canned meat, and vacuum-sealed meats and veggies. Basically, anything that had a long shelf life and was easy to store. I crammed it all into the cart. But drinking water, that was our top priority. I just told the clerk to help us load up 100 cases of bottled water, plus dozens of large-capacity jugs of purified water. Right after we left the supermarket, I called up a renovation company. I demanded they finish installing security bars and reinforcing the doors and windows on our top-floor apartment that very same day. We also needed massive water storage tanks and solar panels. The boss complained that the timeline was way too tight at first. But the second I offered to pay triple the price, he patted his chest and swore they'd get it all done by tomorrow night. After hustling until dark, I sat on the balcony of our new place, looking down at the bustling streets below. But I couldn't relax at all. After all, in exactly 6 days, a devastating flood was going to wipe out everything. I had to race against the clock to get perfectly prepared. Only 6 days left before the flood hits. At the crack of dawn, I dragged my mom and dad out of bed and headed straight for the massive wholesale market in the suburbs. Boss, every single pack of vacuum-sealed beef jerky on those shelves, along with the cured meats and sausages, pack them all up for me. I pointed at the fully stocked meat aisle, without a single trace of hesitation in my voice. The stall owner, a middle-aged guy, dropped his calculator straight to the floor when he heard me. He stared at me with wide eyes. Kid, are you planning to open a grocery store or something? This is way too much. It's enough to feed a whole family for over half a year. Money isn't an issue. You just focus on packing them up. The more, the better. I pulled out my debit card, staring at him dead in the eye. Seeing how dead set I was, the owner stopped asking questions and immediately yelled for 2 of his guys to start boxing things up. Son, are we really buying this much? Are we actually going to need all this? This has to cost a fortune. What if, Mom, there are no what ifs. I cut her off, wiping the sweat from my forehead. When the flood gets here, these supplies will be our lifelines. When that happens, all the money in the world won't buy you food. My dad gently patted my mom on the shoulder and said in a low voice, the kid knows what he's doing. Let's just trust him and help out. For the next 3 hours, I led my parents on a sweep through more than half the market stalls. Survival biscuits, canned fish, and canned fruits were piled up like mountains. Toilet paper, toiletries, waterproof gloves, and other everyday essentials completely filled up 3 small cargo trucks. Watching the workers load the boxes onto the trucks one by one, I finally felt a tiny bit of relief. But I knew deep down, this was still nowhere near enough. Suddenly, just as the very last batch of supplies was about to be loaded up, an accident happened. One of the movers slipped, and a heavy cardboard box, packed full of canned food, slipped right out of his hands. It plummeted straight toward my mom, who was standing right there counting inventory. Watch out, my eyes went wide, and my body moved purely on instinct as I threw myself forward. I shoved my mom out of the way just as the heavy box crashed down hard against my back. But the agonizing pain I braced for never came. Instead, a strange, warm rush of energy began spreading from my back, pulsing through my veins and washing over my entire body. A soothing warmth washed over me, relaxing my entire body. Right after that, a clear voice rang in my head. Danger to host detected. Spatial ability awakened. Initial storage space, 100 cubic meters. Spatial ability? I was both shocked and thrilled. After all, I'd never heard of this kind of power in my past life. This had to be a gift from my rebirth. Forcing down my wild excitement, I focused my attention and stared at the cardboard box on the floor. I silently said to myself, store. The next second, that heavy box vanished into thin air. I silently said release, and the box appeared right back in its spot, completely intact. Son, are you okay? What just happened? I'm fine, just really happy. The supplies all arrived safely, I answered vaguely, brushing it off, not daring to expose the secret of my new power. That afternoon, the renovation company finished their work right on time. I carefully inspected our new home's security setups. The doors and windows had been swapped for top-tier, anti-theft models. The high-capacity water tanks were fully filled with clean water, and the solar panels were all set up and tested. Even if the water and power get cut off, we can still easily meet the basic needs of our family of 3. After that, I headed straight for the hardware store. Hatchets and fire axes for breaking through obstacles and self-defense. Machetes, because they're light and easy to carry. Crossbows, because they're completely silent but pack a deadly punch. These are all absolute must-haves for the apocalypse. I also bought high-power flashlights, headlamps, and several boxes of batteries. And 3 satellite phones. Once I got back home, I sorted the weapons and locked them in the living room cabinet. Then, I divided my storage dimension into a food zone, a medicine zone, and a weapon zone, neatly storing all the supplies category by category. This would make it much easier to grab things quickly later on. That night, I sat in front of the computer, staying up late to look up flood survival information. simple methods for filtering dirty water, prevention measures for post-flood diseases, and tips for identifying edible wild plants out in nature. I printed everything out and put it all together into a thick manual. I left it in the most obvious spot in the living room. Lying in bed, I closed my eyes. I could clearly feel that 100 cubic meter space inside me, along with a warm current flowing right through my veins. There were only 5 days left until the flood hit. My initial preparations were complete, but this was far from enough. My experiences from my past life taught me that the scariest part of the apocalypse wasn't the flood itself, but the sheer evil of human nature exposed once all order collapsed. I had to seize every single second to get stronger, to protect this home, and to protect the most important people in my life, my mom and dad. 4 days left until the flood. The sky outside the window was as dark and gloomy as spilled ink. The weather forecast's promise of cloudy turning to sunny had become a total joke. A light, steady drizzle hadn't stopped since the early hours of the morning. I stood on the balcony, my fingertips touching the freezing glass. I watched the street below, where shallow puddles had already formed. Passing cars splashed water half a meter into the air. Deep down, I was getting seriously anxious, because this rain had arrived even earlier and heavier than it did in my past life. It seemed the disaster was accelerating its pace. Look at this rain, it's getting really freaky. Something terrible is definitely about to happen. Mom, the rain is only going to get worse over the next few days. We just need to stay inside and keep the doors and windows locked tight. Whatever you do, do not go outside. I nodded. I was about to give her a few more reminders, when the doorbell suddenly rang. Peeking through the peephole, I saw Auntie Zhang from next door. She was always pretty close with my parents, and loved sharing fruits and veggies with us. She was a really warm-hearted woman. Right now, she was standing at the door holding her fresh groceries, looking completely confused. I opened the door, and her eyes immediately swept across the corner of the living room, catching sight of the small pile of supplies, and then noticing the reinforced doors and windows. She couldn't help but ask, Xiaolin? Xiaolin? You're buying up a ton of stuff, and boarding up your doors and windows. Did you hear some inside news? Did something happen? My heart skipped a beat. I knew I couldn't hide it anymore. I quickly stepped aside to let her in, and lowered my voice. Auntie Zhang, it's not that something happened. It's that we're in danger. I highly suggest you hurry up and stock up on food and water too. Reinforce your doors and windows. We're about to get hit by a massive rainstorm. It might even cause massive flooding. Auntie Zhang just stared at me blankly. Then she burst out laughing and waved her hand dismissively. Oh, Xiaolin, you silly kid. Have you been watching too many sci-fi movies? I'm not kidding you. Auntie Zhang, my tone turned dead serious. I pointed at the rain outside. Look at this rain. Does this look normal to you? It's been pouring day and night. The city's drainage system is definitely going to fail. If you wait any longer, it's going to be too late to prepare. But Auntie Zhang just brushed me off. Alright, I get it. I'll keep an eye out. Over the course of the next day, the rain grew even more violent. What started as a heavy downpour turned into an absolute torrential storm. The entire world outside became a blinding sheet of white, and my ears were filled with the deafening roar of the rain. The floodwater downstairs had already risen past the ankles, and countless cars had stalled out in the water. Drivers were standing by the side of the road, frantically making phone calls, but no one dared to wade into the water. The news on TV started reporting on urban flooding everywhere, but the anchor still kept a totally straight face, saying, "This is just a normal weather pattern. Please do not panic." But our neighborhood group chat was already blowing up. Someone posted a video of the basement flooding. Muddy water had already completely submerged the stairs. Right at that moment, the doorbell rang again. This time, Auntie Zhang was absolutely soaked to the bone, her hair plastered to her cheeks. Her clothes were splattered with mud, and she stood at the door looking utterly panicked. Her voice was completely choked with sobs. Xiaolin, you were right. There's something seriously wrong with this rain. I just went down to the supermarket, and everything was completely wiped out. I don't have a single crumb of food left at home. What am I going to do? Auntie Zhang, hey, don't panic just yet. I quickly tried to calm her down. Hurry back home and lock all your doors and windows. Stay on the higher floors, and move all your valuables upstairs. Whatever you do, do not go downstairs. After saying that, I discreetly pulled 2 boxes of instant noodles out of my spatial storage, along with a few bottles of water, and handed them over. Here, take this for emergencies. Ration it out, just hold on for the next few days and you'll be fine. Oh, Shaolin, thank you so much. If you hadn't warned me, I really wouldn't know what to do. You literally saved my life. Don't mention it, we're neighbors. It's only right that we look out for each other. I gave her a reassuring smile. Now hurry on back, be careful on your way, and try not to get wet. After seeing Aunt Zhang out, I headed back to the living room. Looking at the pouring rain outside, I knew perfectly well that this seemingly normal downpour was just the beginning of the nightmare. A massive flood was about to swallow the entire city alive. With only 1 day left until the disaster, this insane rain had been pouring for 3 full days and nights. Without the slightest sign of stopping, I stood out on the top floor terrace, my grip tightening around my binoculars as I stared through the heavy rain. The distant river had already burst its banks, the muddy water looking like a giant monster breaking free from its chains, sweeping up branches, debris, and even flipped cars as it went. It roared toward the city. The high rises that used to stand so tall looked so incredibly tiny against the floodwaters, like toy blocks waiting to be washed away. My dad called out from inside, his voice full of panic he just couldn't hide. I put the binoculars away and hurried back inside, locking the terrace door behind me and dragging the sofa and wardrobe over to block it tight. My parents were sitting on the couch, pale as ghosts. Mom was gripping her shirt so tightly that her knuckles had turned completely white. Her eyes were filled with pure terror. I walked over and grabbed their hands, hoping my warmth would calm them down a little bit. Dad, Mom, please don't be scared. Our building is made of reinforced concrete. It's way sturdier than those smaller apartments next door. We are perfectly safe right here. Right as I said that, a deafening crash echoed through the air. The whole building shook violently, and the pictures on the wall crashed right onto the floor. I rushed to the window and looked out. That old apartment block just down the street had already been half destroyed by the flood. Bricks, steel, and mud were plunging into the roaring water, splashing massive waves several meters into the air. Mom let out a terrified scream, clinging onto Dad's arm for dear life. It's okay, Mom, that building was super old. Ours is totally different. I choked back my own panic to comfort her. In my previous life, even though this building didn't collapse, it still ended up with massive cracks. The disasters that followed were no joke either. The rain kept coming down harder, and the floodwaters were rising at a terrifying speed. In just 1 single hour, the water below went from knee-deep all the way up to the 3rd floor. The streets had completely turned into raging rivers. All those cars that were stuck earlier were tumbling around in the currents, looking exactly like tossed-away toys. Screams and cries for help echoed endlessly from downstairs, mixed with thunder and the terrifying crunch of cracking buildings. Blending into this absolutely chilling doomsday symphony, I pulled out my satellite phone to reach someone, anyone, but the screen only showed a fading, glitchy signal. It looked like the entire city's communication grid had totally crashed. Grumble. The sound of a growling stomach broke the heavy silence. I pulled some hot canned food from my storage space, along with bread and water, and handed them to my parents. Dad, Mom, eat up and save your strength. No matter what is going on out there, we have to keep our heads straight. The 3 of us huddled around the coffee table, eating in silence. Nobody said a word, just listening to the relentless storm outside and those distant, heartbreaking cries. I knew right then and there, this once thriving city was completely gone. We had officially stepped into a brutal apocalypse. As night fell, the floodwaters had already reached the 8th floor. Our top floor apartment had literally become a deserted island. Out in the hallway, chaotic footsteps and frantic cries started echoing closer. The neighbors were in a total blind panic. Then suddenly, a violent pounding hit our front door. Amidst the frantic shouting, "Open up! Open the door right now! Let us in! We know you guys hoarded supplies in there. Give us some, hurry up!" The pounding on the door grew more and more violent. The heavy door vibrated with a loud hum, and even tiny cracks began to appear. "If you don't open up, we're gonna smash it in. Open this door, or we'll burn your place down." The threats from outside grew more and more vicious. These usually friendly neighbors were now completely blinded by fear and greed. My heart dropped. The memory of my past life flashed before my eyes, being betrayed by these very neighbors and pushed off a high-rise building. I pulled a fire axe from my spatial storage and gripped it tight. "Everyone, calm down," I yelled through the door, "the floodwaters outside are still rising. It's safer to stay up high in your own homes. The supplies I have are only enough for my family of 3. There's nowhere near enough for everyone." "You're lying. We all saw your family haul in carts full of stuff. The people outside didn't buy it for a second." The pounding on the door grew even fiercer. I tightened my grip on the fire axe, straightening my back. In this life, I absolutely refuse to let the tragedy of my past life happen again. Even if they're my neighbors, I will never gamble with my parents' safety. The banging from outside grew insanely violent. Boom, boom, boom. Each crash felt like a sledgehammer to my chest. The door was already buckling inward. Jagged cracks were spreading all along the doorframe. Mom and Dad cowered tightly behind me. Mom's body was trembling. Once this door gave way, we would be completely doomed. I gripped the axe with both hands. The rough wooden handle dug painfully into my palms, but it gave me a fierce sense of courage. My eyes were locked dead onto the shaking door. "I'm warning you one last time. Stop banging, take one more step inside, and I won't hold back." But the mob outside had entirely lost their minds to fear and greed. The smashing didn't stop, it only got more savage, mixed with vile, vicious curses. "We all saw your family hauling in loads of supplies. How can you sleep at night hoarding it all to yourselves? Open up right now, or we'll tear this door down and storm in." Suddenly, crash, a sharp, deafening crack echoed out. A fist-sized hole was smashed right through the wood. A rough, calloused hand shoved its way inside, frantically feeling around for the lock. Immediately after, a man's face squeezed into the gap, his eyes darting wildly over all the supplies in our house. Pure, naked greed was practically oozing from his face. "There really is food in here. Come on, boys, let's storm the place and take it all." As he yelled, he tried to force his shoulder through the shattered hole. The icy, terrifying memory of being pushed off the roof by these people, the absolute despair, rushed back in an instant. Without a second thought, I raised the axe. I brought it down hard, chopping fiercely into the intruding arm. A blood-curdling scream tore through the hallway. Dark red blood spurted back through the jagged hole, staining the entire door. "You little psycho, you actually slashed him?" Someone outside roared in a blind rage. "This brat is vicious. Grab your weapons, let's kill him." Heavy footsteps and the clanking of metal objects merged into chaos. They were definitely grabbing something heavy to ram the door. I stood my ground, guarding the breached hole with my life. My knuckles were white, veins popping on the hand gripping the axe. This was the apocalypse, not the peaceful world where being a nice guy mattered. Showing mercy to my enemies meant a death sentence for me and my family. Right at this explosive, knife-edge moment, an earth-shattering boom exploded outside. The entire building began to shake violently, and dust poured down from the ceiling. The cup on the coffee table crashed to the floor and shattered into pieces. Outside, the violent pounding on our door suddenly stopped. It was replaced by a chorus of terrifying screams. I peeked outside through the smashed hole in the door. My heart instantly sank. The floodwaters had risen even higher. It was almost creeping up to the 9th floor hallway. All kinds of garbage and debris were just floating on the muddy, churning water. Not far away, an office building was slowly tilting over. I could hear the sickening crack of its walls splitting, right through the heavy rain. The crashing waves shot up several meters high, nearly smashing against the windows of our own building. "Run, the building's collapsing, the water's rising again, hurry, get to the roof." Hearing this, I let out a long, heavy sigh of relief. My back was completely drenched in cold sweat. I quickly called out to my dad. "Dad, help me push this cabinet over. We need to block the hole." Mom rushed over in a panic. She grabbed my hands, checking me all over. "Sweetheart, are you okay? Did you get hurt anywhere?" "I'm fine," I said, shaking my head. I wiped the cold sweat from my forehead. "They've already run off. They won't be coming back anytime soon." I walked slowly over to the window. Staring at the raging floodwaters outside, I realized our city had completely turned into an ocean. All those familiar streets and buildings, they were totally swallowed by the dark, murky water. This nightmare had devoured countless lives, and completely rewritten the fate of every single person. I didn't know how much longer this hell would last. I didn't even know if we'd make it out alive. But I only had one thought in my mind: we have to keep going. For the next few hours, Mom, Dad, and I worked together to organize our supplies. Soon, night fell. I lay on the couch, wide awake. My mind was completely flooded with the horrors of my past life. Those brutal days of freezing and starving, the bitter betrayal of our neighbors, the terrifying screeches of mutated monsters, and the deadly crisis staring us down right now in this life. I knew deep down, this was just the beginning. Once the floodwaters actually recede, what comes next could be deadly plagues, severe food shortages, and absolute monsters who'll do anything to survive. I pulled the crossbow from my storage space and kept it right by my side. This thing has incredible range, massive stopping power, and best of all, it's completely silent. It's the perfect weapon to stay alive in this apocalypse. I closed my eyes, and made a silent vow to myself. No matter what kind of hell we face in the future, no matter how brutal things get, I will fight with everything I have to protect Mom and Dad. Our family of 3. We are absolutely going to survive this apocalypse. 10 days after the flooding began, the torrential rain finally stopped, and the water levels slowly began to drop. But the city was left covered in thick sludge, reeking of absolute rot and decay. The water is finally going down, Dad said, stepping out onto the balcony. You could hear the relief in his voice. But I just frowned and replied, yeah, but the real nightmare is just starting. I knew exactly what happened when the waters left. Deadly diseases would spread fast, and clean food and water would become incredibly rare. We had to be extra careful. Saying this, I pulled out my binoculars and scanned the horizon. I could see survivors in torn rags, struggling just to drag their feet through the thick mud. Their eyes were completely hollow and hopeless. There were also people gripping weapons, viciously scavenging through the ruins for any kind of supplies. Mom looked at me, her voice trembling with worry. Sweetheart, do we still have enough food and water? We have plenty, I answered. The storage space is fully stocked. We have enough to last us a very, very long time. I nodded. A few days later, the water level dropped to the 3rd floor. I put on my waterproof suit, readying my crossbow, machete, and backup supplies. I repeatedly warned my parents, you two stay inside and keep the doors and windows locked tight. Whatever you do, don't open the door for anyone. Mom and Dad kept telling me to be extra careful. I agreed, then cautiously opened the door and headed down the stairs. Reaching the 3rd floor, I saw a young woman holding a crying baby. Rummaging around for things, I felt a pang of sympathy. I pulled a bag of milk powder and a few cans of food from my storage space and handed them over. Here, for you. She thanked me, her eyes full of gratitude. I continued on my way down. A sudden sound of arguing echoed. I followed the noise, and saw a few men violently snatching supplies from an old man. Seeing them about to strike the elder, the humiliation of being robbed in my past life instantly surged up inside me. I couldn't hold back anymore and yelled, stop right there. The men turned to look at me. The leader looked me up and down, and sneered dismissively, listen here, kid. Mind your own business, or we'll mess you up too. I didn't say a word, just slowly raised my crossbow and aimed it right at him. My eyes were ice cold, completely fearless. Seeing the crossbow, the man's face instantly dropped. He knew exactly how deadly this weapon was. What do you think you're doing? Give the supplies back to the old man, and get the hell out of here. I said with a freezing tone. Seeing this, the guys exchanged glances. Looking hesitant, they knew with my weapon, I wasn't someone to mess with. If it came to a real fight, they might not win. You win this time. The leader tossed the supplies back to the old man and ran off with his tail between his legs. The old man quickly gathered his things, clutching them tightly as he thanked me over and over. Thank you so much, young man. You saved my life. Over the next few days, I went out a few more times. Each time, I managed to find useful supplies. I also ran into that woman with the baby again, Wang Wan. I gave her some more supplies and suggested she stay with Uncle Lee so they could look out for each other. Both of them were deeply grateful, and slowly, a sense of trust built up between us. One day, Wang Wan suddenly rushed over in a panic, saying, Uncle Lee has a fever. She begged me to come take a look. Hearing this, my heart sank. The plague following the retreating floods had finally arrived. I'll go over there and take a look with you. I immediately grabbed my medical kit and hurried with her to Uncle Lee's place. Uncle Lee was lying in bed, his face flushed bright red. His breathing was heavy and his forehead was burning hot. I took out some fever reducers and antibiotics and helped him take them. I placed a wet towel on his forehead to cool him down. Let's keep an eye on him for now. If he's not better by tomorrow, we'll figure something else out. With careful treatment, Uncle Lee's condition improved. His high fever broke and his coughing eased up. He and Wang Wan both started treating me as their rock. One day, I called them both to my home. Uncle Lee and Wang Wan agreed without a second thought. So, over the next few days, we moved their belongings up to the top floor. With them joining us, my parents completely stepped back behind the scenes, taking charge of logistics and support. While I threw myself into reinforcing our base, especially since Uncle Lee used to be a construction worker. So we decided to move our base to an abandoned villa above ground. Under his guidance, we reinforced the front doors of the villa. While we were fortifying it, a sudden knock came from the door. Looking through the peephole, I saw two exhausted strangers. They were both covered in wounds. "We're survivors. Could you spare some food? We haven't eaten in days." Their desperate pleas echoed from outside. People are unpredictable in this apocalypse. Be careful. We're running low on supplies too, so we can only spare a little. Take this and leave immediately, I said, pulling 2 packs of instant noodles and 2 bottles of water from my dimensional space. I slipped them through the crack in the door. The 2 men thanked us profusely, but just as they were turning to leave, one of them suddenly spoke up. "We know about a supermarket packed with supplies, but it's overrun by mutant rats, and we can't fight them off alone. If you're willing to come with us, we'll split the loot 50-50. Mutant rats? My heart skipped a beat. In my past life, after the floods receded, plenty of fierce, massive mutant creatures had indeed shown up. If we could secure a massive haul of supplies, it would be a game changer for our team's survival. Are you telling the truth? Why would we lie to you?" The man promised frantically. I thought it over for a moment. I felt like this whole thing was incredibly suspicious, maybe even a trap. But the temptation of those supplies was just too great. Why would they volunteer such valuable information? Could this be a setup? I completely agreed with Uncle Lee's concerns. But this time, the payoff far outweighed the risks, so I still wanted to give it a shot. The next day, the 2 men arrived right on time. They introduced themselves as Zhang Cheng and Li Wei, just a couple of ordinary office workers. After going over a quick plan, we headed out for the supermarket. It really wasn't far from where we lived, only about a 20-minute walk. Along the way, we carefully skirted around the dangerous zones, dodging giant mutant cockroaches and vicious, mutated stray dogs. We quickly reached the entrance. The main doors had been completely smashed in by the floodwaters. Shards of glass were scattered everywhere, and it was pitch black inside. Reeking of a nauseating stench, I flicked on my flashlight to scan the interior. Shelves had collapsed, goods were strewn everywhere, and countless glowing red eyes blinked back at us from the shadows. They belonged to the mutant rats. These things were several times larger than any normal rat. Beneath their slick, dark fur lay rows of razor-sharp teeth. The moment they spotted us, they let out a deafening squeak and swarmed right at us. "Watch out," I screamed, raising my crossbow and nailing the lead rat right in the face. Uncle Lee swung his axe, hacking into the swarm, while Zhang Cheng and Li Wei grabbed their clubs and jumped into the fray. After a brutal, frantic battle, we managed to slaughter most of the rats. Seeing that they were losing, the survivors scattered and fled. We stood there panting heavily, staring at the dense piles of rat corpses on the floor, shivering with delayed terror. After catching our breath, we split into 2 groups. Uncle Lee and I took one side, while Zhang Cheng and Li Wei took the other, and we began to loot the supermarket. Mountains of food, water, daily supplies, and medicine were quickly swept up into my dimensional space. It wasn't long before my storage was stuffed to the brim, but just as we were getting ready to leave, a monstrous, echoing shriek tore through the air. My blood ran cold. Knowing something even more dangerous was coming, I quickly shined my flashlight toward the source of the sound, only to see a massive rat, dozens of times bigger than a normal one, crawling right out of the warehouse. "Oh no, it's the Rat King," Zhang Cheng yelled, his face turning pale. Seeing this, I instantly raised my crossbow and shot at its head. But the bolt actually bounced right off its thick fur. The Rat King charged with brutal force, knocking over several shelves in an instant. We stumbled backward again and again. "This thing is way too tough," Li Bo shouted in a panic. I quickly scanned the beast's body and noticed the fur around its eyes and belly was much thinner. I rushed to tell everyone what I found, while lifting my crossbow once more. I aimed right for its eye and fired. The bolt hit, and the Rat King let out a deafening roar of pain. It started thrashing its head wildly. Li Bo seized the chance. He raised his axe and slashed viciously into the Rat King's belly. Crunch, the blade sank deep, and blood gushed out. Zhang Cheng and Li Wei instantly jumped in. They grabbed their clubs and smashed its eyes and stomach over and over. The monster was completely disoriented. It grew even more enraged, violently swinging its massive claws around. We barely dodged getting slashed a few times. After a brutal, bloody fight, we finally drained all of its energy. It collapsed to the ground, taking its last breaths. I walked up, raised the axe, and brought it down hard on its head. Ending its life once and for all. We all collapsed onto the floor, totally exhausted, panting heavily. Finally, we finally killed it, Li Wei said, his voice trembling. After resting for a bit, we made our way back to the base. Wang Wan was absolutely thrilled to see us come back fully loaded with supplies. "You're back, did it go smoothly?" Hearing this, I told her everything about how we killed the Rat King. She was completely blown away by the story. Over the next few days, we sorted out the supplies and stored them away by category. The base felt so much more stocked up, and our confidence in surviving this grew even stronger. Early one morning, a violent crashing against the door woke everyone up. "Open up, you people inside, hand over your supplies right now." A rough, raspy voice shouted from the other side, followed by the deafening clang of metal bashing against our security bars. Looking through the peephole, I saw 5 guys armed with machetes, smashing wildly against our reinforced door. "It's that gang of scavengers we chased off before." Uncle Lee leaned in and whispered, his eyes totally grim. I recognized them instantly too. These were the ruthless looters from my past life. I just didn't expect them to actually show up at our doorstep. "Nobody panic, our security bars are solid. Let's drain their energy first," I instructed, keeping my voice low. Then I yelled out toward the door, "We don't have any extra supplies here. Back off now, or we're not holding back." "Cut the crap, we all saw you drag a huge haul from the supermarket," the leader roared, slashing his machete against the bars. Sparks flew everywhere. Meanwhile, Uncle Lee quietly slipped out to the balcony, getting ready to ambush them from the side. I waited for the perfect moment, raised my crossbow, and shot the leader right in the shoulder. The guy screamed in agony and collapsed to the floor. The rest of them froze in shock for a second. But then, they started ramming the door even more aggressively. Just then, Uncle Lee jumped out from the balcony. I hurled a heavy steel pipe, smashing it right into one of their backs. I took the chance to lead Zhang Cheng and Li Wei out the door. We worked together perfectly. In just a few minutes, we fought off the rest of them. While clearing the area, we found a dropped map. It marked an abandoned factory not too far away. And guess what? It had an advanced diesel generator. To get our hands on that generator, we geared up. I grabbed my crossbow and a fire axe. Uncle Lee packed some homemade explosives, while Zhang Cheng and Li Wei loaded up on Molotov cocktails. Following the map, we trudged through a muddy wasteland of ruins. We soon reached the abandoned factory. The front gates were locked tight. It was dead silent all around. Something definitely felt off. Watch out for an ambush. Just as I was about to pry the lock open, a pack of wolves suddenly started howling from both sides of the factory. My stomach dropped. I spun around. Over a dozen mutant wolves, twice the size of normal ones, were baring their razor-sharp teeth, glaring at us with pure murder in their eyes. Their fur was a sickly ash gray, matted with thick mud and fresh blood. They'd obviously just fed. "It's a mutant wolf pack. Form up, back to back," I yelled. I raised my crossbow and nailed the lead wolf. The beast let out a terrifying shriek and hit the dirt. But the rest of the pack instantly lunged at us. Uncle Lee swung his axe, slicing right through a wolf's claws. Zhang Cheng and Li Wei sparked up their Molotovs and hurled them. Flames instantly exploded across the ground, forcing the pack back for a moment. But in that tight space, the wolves couldn't all attack at once. I kept picking them off with precise shots, while Uncle Lee blocked with his axe, and the other two kept raining down fire with their Molotovs. After over half an hour of brutal fighting, we finally wiped out every last mutant wolf. Every single one of us was covered in wounds. We were completely dead on our feet. "Let's rest for 5 minutes, then we go inside and find that generator," I gasped out, leaning heavily against the wall. After catching our breath, we pushed our way into the abandoned factory. The inside was a total wreck. Scattered parts and junked products were just everywhere. We tracked the location on the map, heading deep into the factory's machine room. And there it was. The advanced diesel generator. Yes, finally, this is it. Uncle Lee rushed over, completely thrilled, and checked the condition of the machine. It's in perfect shape, just needs a full tank of diesel and it'll run like a dream. So, we started scavenging around. And finally, tucked away in a corner of the room, we found several sealed drums of diesel. But just as we were about to heave the generator onto our pushcart, a heavy rush of footsteps echoed through the hall. Damn it, I knew it was a trap. I snapped my crossbow up, staring dead at the doorway. It was the same gang of scavengers we beat back earlier, but this time, they brought backup. At least a dozen of them, all armed to the teeth. You seriously think you can stop us? I sneered. I signaled the guys to get ready for a fight. You're not walking out of here alive today. The gang leader roared, and they charged straight at us. We ducked behind the heavy machinery for cover and opened fire. Zhang Cheng and Li Wei kept tossing Molotovs to scatter them, but there were just too many of them. We're losing the upper hand. We can't keep going on like this. We need to break out, right now. I yelled, Uncle Lee, you cover us. We'll push the generator out first. Uncle Lee nodded, grabbed a pack of explosives, and threatened them. Take one more step, and I'll blow this place to pieces. We can all die together. Seeing this, the enemies actually stopped in their tracks. We took the chance to push the generator, and bolted out of the machine room, sprinting straight for the factory gates. But they weren't giving up, chasing hot on our heels. We were pushing the generator, running wildly through the ruins, with the enemies right on our tail. They kept hurling rocks and wooden clubs at us. At this rate, they were going to catch up. I glanced over my shoulder, and saw them getting closer and closer. Zhang Cheng, Li Wei, you two keep pushing the generator ahead. Uncle Lee and I will hold them off. Hearing this, the two nodded. They pushed the cart even faster, while Uncle Lee and I came to a dead stop. And turned to face our pursuers. Think you can just run away? Not so fast, the lead guy roared as he charged at us. I raised my hand crossbow, and shot two of them right in a row. The flames erupted into a wall of fire, temporarily blocking their path. Finally, we could see the outline of our base. We shoved the generator inside and rushed into the base. They started pounding on the gates like maniacs, but our defensive fences were incredibly sturdy. There was no way they were breaking through. The leader had no choice but to take his men and bitterly walk away. Seeing them leave, we all just collapsed onto the floor, completely exhausted. Uncle Lee didn't waste a second and started installing the generator. Relying on his years of construction experience, he had it hooked up in no time. He filled it with diesel and hit the start button. After a loud, rumbling hum, the generator successfully roared to life. Every light bulb in the base instantly flickered on. Staring at the bright lights, we were absolutely thrilled. Once the generator was fully running, our base finally got a major upgrade. Uncle Lee used the new power to hook up a water pump, pumping nearby rainwater straight into our storage tanks. Zhang Cheng and Li Wei used the electricity to craft even more weapons and defenses, like electrified barbed wire and homemade stun batons. Wang Wan used the power to properly store our food, and even set up a makeshift clinic. She carefully sorted all the meds we'd scavenged. Later that day, I was out on the base's terrace, practicing with my hand crossbow. Suddenly, I felt this strange, warm current surging through my body. Everything in front of me suddenly snapped into crystal clear focus. Just then, Uncle Lee walked out onto the terrace too. He was doing some strength training, when he suddenly threw a punch at a nearby steel pipe, and completely bent it out of shape. My strength, it feels like it's gotten way bigger. Uncle Lee muttered in utter disbelief. Hearing that, something clicked in my mind. Could this be the first sign of our powers awakening? I quickly told Uncle Lee what I just felt. He thought it was super bizarre, too. We headed back inside, and told Zhang Cheng, Li Wei, and Wang Wan all about it. Do you guys think we might be awakening our powers too? It's highly possible. In this apocalypse, a lot of people end up awakening special abilities. We might have just hit that critical turning point, and in order to fully trigger our powers, we started ramping up our training. I practiced firing my hand crossbow and did physical conditioning every single day. Uncle Li focused on strength training, while Zhang Chang and Li Wei worked on their speed and reflexes. A few days later during training, Zhang Chang suddenly felt his speed increase drastically. He could actually dart through the ruins in a flash, dodging obstacles with ease. I awakened my power. It's a speed ability, Zhang Chang shouted excitedly. We were all thrilled for him. It also hardened our resolve to train. After Zhang Chang awakened his speed ability, the entire squad's passion for training was ignited. Meanwhile, Uncle Li shifted his focus to modifying our power generators. Even though the base's electricity met our basic needs, we still needed to boost efficiency to support more equipment running in the future. Uncle Li dug out the scrap parts we brought back from the factory. Relying on his years of construction and mechanical repair experience, he started dismantling and rebuilding the generators. As for Wang Wan, in her spare time between taking care of the kids, she held onto a first aid manual found in the rubble, studying it carefully, and from time to time, she'd ask us about simple first aid tips. She took it upon herself to handle the squad's medical care. 3 days later, Uncle Li stood wiping his sweat in front of the upgraded generator and pressed the start button. The machine hummed much smoother than before, and the dashboard showed the power output had literally doubled. It worked. With this much power output now, we won't have any issues even if we install a few more AC units and water pumps. Hearing Uncle Li's voice, we all gathered around, looking at the bright lights and the smoothly running equipment. Our hearts were filled with a sense of security. Just around dusk, 2 of the guys came running back in a panic, followed by a young man covered in injuries. Lin Mo, we ran into another super. This kid has a strength ability. He was being hunted by a gang, so we went ahead and saved him. Zhang Chang said, panting heavily. I sized up the young man. He had a burly build with clearly defined muscles on his arms. Right now, he was clutching his wound and frowning. My name is Zhao Lei. I was at a small survivor base before. Because I awakened a strength ability, the base leader tried to force me to submit to him. I refused, so they hunted me down. I pressed him for details about other people with abilities. Zhao Lei said that a lot of supers have already appeared in the city, with all sorts of different powers. Some survivor bases specifically recruit or even capture them. Over the next few days, we dialed up the intensity of our training. I tried to gain better control over my spatial ability, hoping to expand my storage capacity. Uncle Li continued polishing his strength, while Li Wei focused on sharpening his reflexes. This morning, we formed a team and headed to an unexplored stretch of ruins to scavenge for supplies. Just as we entered the ruined area, Li Wei suddenly stopped in his tracks, his face turning grim. Something's not right. Something is definitely wrong. There's danger ahead. I can feel a really strong sense of malice. We all went on high alert. I told Li Wei to sense it more carefully. He closed his eyes. After a moment, he pointed to an abandoned building on the left and said, "The danger is right in there. It feels like there's a lot of them." I signaled for everyone to hide, while I quietly crept up to the building to take a look. Peeking through the window, I saw dozens of mutated bats nesting inside. They were absolutely massive, with wingspans stretching over 1 meter wide. Their teeth were exceptionally sharp, too. I immediately backed away. I told everyone what was going on. Thank goodness Li Wei sensed it ahead of time. Otherwise, we would have walked right into a trap if we just rushed in. Suddenly, Li Wei's whole body started glowing. A wave of energy pulsed outward. I think I just awakened my power. I can sense danger and life signs within 100 meters. That's a sensory ability. We were all so thrilled for him. With Li Wei's new sensory power, we'd be able to avoid danger before it even happened. We decided to ditch exploring that building and head to other areas instead. Thanks to Li Wei's amazing senses, we successfully dodged several waves of mutant creatures and even found a hidden warehouse. It was packed with canned food and medicine. We really hit the jackpot this time. After Li Wei unlocked his sensory power, our training became much more focused. We all pushed ourselves harder. He would practice every single day by lifting heavy steel pipes, and sometimes he'd even have Zhao Lei spar with him. One day, we decided to reinforce the base's walls. We could move the materials, but it was incredibly exhausting. Then he walked over and said to let him try. He took a deep breath and effortlessly lifted the heavy steel rebar right off the ground. He carried it steadily to the exact spot we needed. We were all completely blown away. Then it hit him. I awakened my power. It's a super strength ability. With his help, reinforcing the base went incredibly fast. We used the steel rebar and cement to beef up the walls. And even set up an electrified barbed wire fence right on top. Once the base was fully secured, someone suggested a plan to scavenge for supplies in the city center. It used to be a booming commercial district, so it had to be packed with loot, but it was pretty far from our base, and way more dangerous to explore. With my sensory powers, we can spot danger before it gets to us, Li Wei said. So, we decided to make the trip to the city center. I double-checked our food and water stash to make sure we had enough to survive out there for a few days. Wang Wan packed up the first aid kit, and even whipped up a few new Molotov cocktails. Meanwhile, Uncle Li did one last sweep of the base's defenses. We had Zhao Lei stay behind to hold down the fort, while the rest of us geared up to leave at dawn. The next morning, Li Bo, Zhang Cheng, Li Wei, Wang Wan, and I finally set out for the city center. We cautiously made our way through the ruined streets. Li Wei kept his senses sharp, scanning the area, constantly warning us to steer clear of trouble. After walking for about 2 hours, Li Wei suddenly froze in his tracks. There's a massive swarm of mutant creatures right ahead. I think they're mutant cockroaches. We immediately ducked into an abandoned building to hide. Peeking out at the clearing ahead, there were just way too many of those giant roaches. Taking them head-on would be a death wish. I frowned and whispered, "Zhang Cheng, use your super speed to flank them from behind. Distract them as much as you can. Li Bo, you're on cover duty." Zhang Cheng immediately triggered his powers and vanished in a blur, darting right behind the mutated roaches. He lit a Molotov cocktail and hurled it straight at them. The giant roaches immediately burst into flames. "Now's our chance, let's move," I let out a yell and led everyone charging out of the building. We sprinted through the clearing, dodging the areas with mutated roaches. But just as we were about to make it across, I instantly raised my crossbow and shot it. Wang Wan jumped in fright, but she quickly scrambled to keep up with us. We kept moving forward. By midday, we stopped to rest in an abandoned restaurant, pulling out food and water to get our strength back. In the afternoon, we arrived at the edge of a residual river channel, left behind by the floods. This was the only way to the city center. The water in the channel was incredibly murky, making it impossible to see what was underneath. Li Wei immediately closed his eyes to sense the area. There's a big guy underwater, and I mean really big. It's super aggressive. Just as he said that, the water suddenly started bubbling, and a massive mutated crocodile poked its head out. This thing was over 10 meters long, covered in rough, armor-like skin. The moment the mutated croc saw us, it swam straight for the shore. Its massive tail thrashed against the surface, sending huge splashes of water into the air. "Get ready to fight, everyone. Uncle Li, use your strength ability to block its attacks. Zhang Cheng, circle around to its back and go for the eyes. Li Wei, you're on sensory duty, track its movements. Give us early warnings." I barked out the orders rapidly, aiming my crossbow right at the mutated crocodile's eye. The beast charged onto the bank, opening its massive jaws to snap at Uncle Li. Uncle Li shoved up the steel rebar he had ready, wedging it desperately against its jaws. "Push harder, you little beast. It's about to attack. It's aiming for you, Lin Mo." I threw myself to the side. The mutated croc's jaws snapped shut on thin air and smashed into the ground, leaving a massive crater. Seizing the chance, I raised my crossbow again, and shot it right in the right eye. I pulled a pack of explosives from my spatial inventory, lit it, and chucked it straight into the mutated croc's mouth. Run! With a deafening boom, the mutated crocodile's head was blown to bloody pieces. It collapsed to the ground, dead. We were all so exhausted we slumped onto the dirt, staring at the dead beast, feeling incredibly lucky to be alive. After taking down the mutated crocodile, we just collapsed on the ground from total exhaustion. It took us a solid half an hour just to get our strength back. The mutated croc was massive, meaning there was plenty of meat. I just tossed the entire carcass straight into my spatial inventory. This stuff was a treasure for boosting our physical stats, so there was no way we were wasting it. Once we got back to the base, Zhao Lei's jaw practically hit the floor when he saw the massive beast we had brought back. Wang Wan instantly started boiling water, and together we butchered and washed the crocodile meat. We scraped off the tough scales, removed the bones, and chopped the tender meat into chunks to boil. The croc meat was incredibly firm to the bite, with just a faint fishy taste. But it smelled absolutely amazing once it was cooked. We scarfed it down like starving wolves. Not long after finishing my portion, I felt a rush of heat surging through my body. The exhaustion from the fight just melted away, and I swear I felt significantly stronger. I headed back to my room and tried to channel my spatial powers. Suddenly, there was a loud buzz in my head. The sensory range of my spatial inventory expanded drastically. My inventory, which used to be 100 cubic meters, had instantly expanded to 500 cubic meters. But the best surprise was that I actually unlocked a brand new ability. Short-range teleportation. I focused all my attention. I just thought about teleporting to the balcony, and the very next second, I instantly popped out there from my room. It was incredibly fast, with almost zero delay. It actually worked. This is the level 2 spatial power. I yelled out in pure excitement, and everyone rushed over right away. I showed off my teleportation and my expanded storage space, and the whole team was absolutely thrilled for me. With this new teleportation power, our future fights and supply runs are going to be a whole lot safer. Over the next 2 days, we ate the mutant meat to boost our physical strength. While making our final preparations to head into the city center, once everything was perfectly set, we hit the road again, heading straight for the heart of the city. Our SUV rumbled over streets completely covered in thick mud and jagged rubble. It was a really rough ride. Li Wei kept his sensory powers on high alert, carefully scanning our surroundings. 500 meters straight ahead, there's mutant activity on the left side, and a whole lot of them too. Li Wei suddenly called out. I immediately signaled Zhang Cheng to hit the brakes. We quietly slipped out of the car, hiding behind some abandoned vehicles to get a good look. Over in a ruined mall on our left, we saw dozens of mutated wild dogs viciously tearing into a corpse. These mutts were way bigger than your average stray. They had razor-sharp teeth, mangy fur, and completely glowing, vicious eyes. That's a pack of mutant hounds. They won't go down easy, Uncle Lee muttered with a heavy frown. I thought it over for a second, and agreed that steering completely clear of them was our smartest move. So, Zhang Cheng kicked his speed powers into gear, dashing ahead to scout out a safe path. He was back in a flash, signaling that we could sneak around them. We tiptoed carefully around that ruined mall, and kept pushing our way toward the downtown area. The closer we got to the city center, the thicker the ruins became. Those towering skyscrapers from before had mostly crumbled down, leaving absolutely nothing but shattered, skeletal frames. I'm picking up life signs up ahead, a huge cluster of them. Their energy is all over the place. Some feel friendly, but others, definitely hostile. We slowed right down. Up ahead, in a relatively intact plaza, we spotted dozens of survivors huddled together. Most of them were covered in dirty, ragged clothes. Some were desperately digging around for supplies, while others kept a paranoid watch on their surroundings. Not wanting to stir up any unnecessary drama, I originally planned to just take a detour around them. But just as we were about to slip away, a few of those survivors spotted our SUV. Their eyes instantly lit up with raw greed. Suddenly, a handful of guys armed with steel pipes and machetes charged straight at us. The guy leading the pack was this massive, towering brute. He had absolute murder in his eyes. I told Wang Wan to stay put in the car, while I led Uncle Lee, Zhang Cheng, and Li Wei out to face them. Back the hell off if you want to live, I warned them with ice in my voice. The big guy just let out a nasty sneer. Just the 4 of you? And you've got the guts to act tough on my turf? Before I could blink, he swung his heavy machete right at my head. I instantly triggered my teleport, dodging the lethal strike while slamming a brutal punch straight into his chest. Ever since my level 2 spatial power woke up, my physical strength had shot through the roof too. That single punch sent his massive body flying backward through the air. He crashed hard into the dirt, hacking up mouthfuls of blood. The rest of the scavengers froze in absolute shock for a second. But then they just charged at us even more furiously. Zhang Cheng immediately unleashed his speed power. blurring through the crowd and viciously smashing their kneecaps with his steel pipe. It barely took a few minutes to beat that gang of raiders completely back. Once we cleared out the trash, we got moving again, quickly rolling into what used to be a buzzing, high-end commercial street. We hopped out to scavenge for supplies, and Li Wei's sensory powers seriously saved the day. Guys, the underground warehouse of that supermarket on the east side is totally packed with supplies. And I'm picking up a really faint heartbeat down there. Must be mutants. We made it to the supermarket entrance. Pride opened the barricaded doors and headed down the stairs. The door to the underground warehouse was cracked open, with a weird sizzling sound coming from inside. I pushed the door open and shined my flashlight, only to find over a dozen mutant centipedes coiled up inside. They were as thick as a human arm, their bodies gleaming with a sickening black luster. The second they saw us, they scrambled right at us. Uncle Lee swung his axe, chopping them to pieces, while Zhang Cheng chucked a Molotov, using the flames to push the centipedes back. It didn't take long before we wiped them out completely, scoring a massive haul of supplies. But just as we were packing up to leave, Li Wei went dead pale and gasped. "Oh crap, there's an incredibly strong life signal heading our way, fast." We bolted out of the supermarket and made a mad dash for the SUV. Just as we reached the car, we heard it from the underground parking lot. A deafening roar, right after, a mutant croc, even bigger than the one we killed before, came crashing out. It was a Tier 2 mutant croc. "Get in the car, now!" I screamed. At the exact same moment, I teleported, grabbing Li Wei from outside and dragging him in. Zhang Cheng instantly fired up the engine, slammed on the gas, and we peeled out of there. That Tier 2 croc was hot on our tail, its massive tail smashing against the ground, shaking the ruins all around us. If this keeps up, it's gonna catch us. I leaned out the window and fired my crossbow straight at its eyes. But the bolt just bounced right off its thick scales. I took a deep breath, and decided to risk it all. "Zhang Cheng, slow down. I'll teleport behind that thing and hit its weak spot." I waited for the perfect moment and blinked. A split second later, I was standing right on the beast's back. The scales on its back were the thinnest. I whipped out my fire axe and brought it down with everything I had. The axe dug deep, and the Tier 2 croc let out an agonizing, ear-piercing shriek. It was badly hurt. Taking my chance, I teleported straight back into the car. Zhang Cheng floored it and lost the monster. We drove like maniacs, and didn't stop to rest until the beast was completely out of sight. Everyone was dripping with sweat, hearts still pounding out of our chests. After catching our breath for a bit, we got back on the road. To make sure we didn't run into another Tier 2 croc, we took a much longer detour. Li Wei kept his sensory powers activated the whole way, helping us dodge a few more waves of mutants. On the drive back, we took the mutant meat. We scavenged from the commercial district, cleaned it up, and grilled some of it for lunch. Who would have thought? Mutant centipede meat actually boosts your physical strength too. After eating, I could feel the energy in my body totally stabilizing. By dusk, we finally made it back to base. Zhao Lei was absolutely thrilled to see us return with a full haul. We stored the food in the main pantry, handed out the daily supplies to everyone, and restocked the med bay with all the drugs. After dinner, I called the squad in for a debrief. We went over everything from our run into the city center. We scored big today, not just bringing back a ton of supplies, but even boosting our own strength from that mutant meat. But man, the city center is way more dangerous than we thought. Between the Tier 2 mutants and the raiders, we're gonna have to be super careful if we go back. Lin Mo, your teleportation power is completely insane. If it weren't for you out there today, we never would have escaped that Tier 2 croc. Our squad's power level has really shot up, but it's still not enough. We need to step up our training from now on, especially when it comes to combining our abilities. Everyone agreed on this, so we decided to add more time for power training every single day. Over the next few days, we sorted out our supplies while pushing ourselves harder in training. I worked on mastering my teleportation, and even discovered my spatial powers could briefly store up energy. When released, it creates an energy shield. Li Bo and Zhao Lei trained their physical strength together, building up a really solid teamwork. Zhang Cheng practiced his speed and dodging, learning how to land precise attacks while moving incredibly fast. Our squad was getting stronger and stronger, and our base was becoming a real fortress. But I knew, this was just one tiny phase of the apocalypse. There were way more terrifying mutant creatures out there, and even crueler tests of human nature waiting for us. To restock some desperately needed medical supplies, I took Zhang Cheng and Li Wei out on another run. We specifically chose the unmapped ruins in the west side of the city. Suddenly, Li Wei squeezed his eyes shut, his voice heavy with warning. There are massive life signs about 1 kilometer ahead. The energy is really chaotic. I'm feeling this crushing pressure from some heavy hitters, and a bunch of weak, terrified auras too. We were just about to go around them, but their patrol squad spotted us first. Stop right there, you're trespassing on rock base territory. Identify yourselves. I signaled the other two to stay cool, stepped forward and shouted back, we're just survivors from around here. Just passing through to scavenge for supplies. The patrol captain looked us up and down. When he saw our off-road vehicle and weapons, his eyes shifted. Come with me, the boss wants to see you. We followed the patrol into the base, and the sight inside totally blew our minds. The place was strictly divided, with residential zones, supply depots, training grounds. They even had a small farm. But looking closer, you could see the uniformed ability users and managers looking clean and well-fed. While the ordinary survivors were dressed in absolute rags, their eyes totally dead. They were hunched over, hauling heavy crates. One slight pause and they'd get screamed at. Your squad's got some real talent. Why don't you join us here at Rock Base? I'll give you the VIP treatment. Your own private housing, all the supplies you need. I'll even put you in the core management team. Faced with Boss Hu's offer, I didn't say yes right away. I used the excuse of needing to talk it over with my team, and asked to look around the base for a day first. Boss Hu happily agreed, and even assigned one of his guys to escort us around. That guy gave us the grand tour of the base. When we walked over to the supply zone, I clearly saw that when the ability users and managers picked up their rations, they got rice, canned food, and pure water. But the ordinary survivors? They only got a tiny ration of dry biscuits and some disgusting, murky filtered water. An old man asked for just half a biscuit more, and a guard shoved him straight into the dirt, kicking him over and over again. The ordinary folks around just clenched their fists in silence, too terrified to speak up. It's just survival of the fittest. We ability users protect this base, so it's only right we get the good stuff. Those normal people are just dead weight. They should be damn grateful we even tossed them a scrap of food. That afternoon, we hit the training zone, and saw a bunch of ability users viciously beating up a young survivor. Their excuse was that he wasn't cooperating as a training dummy. Zhang Cheng lost his temper and was about to step in, but I held him back. After all, we were on their turf right now. That evening, we noticed a few ordinary survivors, secretly shooting us warning glances. While the guards weren't looking, a young guy quickly slipped a note into my hand. It read, "Tiger is brutal. Get out as soon as you can." Reading that note just made me even more determined to refuse his offer. Back in Tiger's office, I laid my cards on the table. We weren't joining the rock base. Hearing that, the fake smile on his face vanished in an instant. His eyes turned cold and sinister. "Brother Lin Mo, think this through. Teaming up with me will save you a whole lot of trouble. But if you turn me down, surviving in these West City ruins isn't gonna be easy." I didn't flinch at his threat. I looked him dead in the eye and said, "My mind is made up. Our squad can handle ourselves. So don't you worry about us." Tiger slammed his hand hard on the desk. He shot up from his chair. "You wanna do this the hard way? I gave you a chance, you ungrateful punk." He was planning to keep us here by force. Zhang Cheng immediately clenched his fists, triggering his speed powers, ready to throw down at a moment's notice. Li Wei tensed up too, hyper-focused on every movement around us. "I won't force you to stay. But, since you've seen the setup of my base, walking out of here in one piece won't be that simple. Either you join us, or you leave half your supplies and 2 of your powered guys behind. Then, I'll let you walk." I fired up my spatial powers, throwing a transparent shield right in front of us. "Don't think your numbers scare us. If we actually throw down, it's anyone's guess who walks away from this." Tiger's expression twitched, before he let out a cold scoff. "Consider yourselves lucky. I've got urgent business at the base today, so I'll let this slide. But you better remember this. The West City is my turf. Don't ever let me catch you around here again." We didn't waste a single second. We spun around and bolted out of the base. The second we stepped past the high-voltage fences, I noticed 5 powered guys tailing right behind us. They were definitely planning to ambush us on the road. I knew that bastard tiger wouldn't just let us walk away. I gripped my hand crossbow tight, my eyes locked in dead cold. Lure them into the abandoned factory district up ahead. The terrain there is a maze. It's perfect for an ambush. The biker gang behind us was hot on our trail, but they couldn't spread out in those narrow alleyways. Their speed dropped drastically. Now, hit the brakes and fight back. I roared out loud. I was the first to jump out of the car, instantly triggering my teleportation. I blinked right next to the lead motorcycle, landing a brutal kick that sent the rider crashing into the dirt. The guy had barely scrambled to his feet before Zhang Chang was all over him, smashing a steel pipe relentlessly against his joints, making the guy scream in pure agony. "Watch out, he's a heavy hitter. Super strength," Li Wei yelled, warning us about a massive brute charging in from the left. The giant swung a heavy iron chain, slamming it viciously right at me. I threw up my spatial shield in a flash. Clang, the chain bounced right off. And in that split second while the brute stood there stunned, I yanked Uncle Li and Zhao Lei out of my dimensional space. Both of them immediately fired up their strength powers. Working together, they hoisted up a rusted industrial machine, and hurled it straight at the other 3 attackers. Boom, the heavy machinery slammed into the ground, kicking up a massive cloud of dust into the air. The 3 mutants scattered in a panic. Li Wei immediately tapped into his sensory powers, locked onto their positions, and yelled, 2 on the right, 1 on the left. Using my teleportation, I blinked across the battlefield, and fired my hand crossbow, nailing one of the mutants on the right straight in the leg. Meanwhile, Zhang Chang flanked left, and lobbed a Molotov cocktail at their motorcycle. Flames erupted in seconds. Li Bo and Zhao Lei teamed up against the last mutant. Stacking their enhanced strength together, they threw a massive punch. That sent the guy flying through the air, crashing hard into the factory wall. He was out cold. I looked down at the groaning mutants on the ground, and said grimly, "We need to head back and fortify the base. Right now, they're going to launch a full-scale attack, and we have to be ready." As soon as we got back, I called everyone together to upgrade our defenses. We installed extra electrified barbed wire along the walls, set up watchtowers, and dug a 2-meter deep trench completely circling the base, lining the bottom with razor-sharp steel rebar. Zhang Chang and Li Wei handled weapon modifications, churning out batches of homemade stun batons and Molotov cocktails. Wang Wan organized our medical supplies, setting up a makeshift triage station, and teaching everyone some basic first aid to stop bleeding. At dawn on the 4th day, Li Wei suddenly screamed, "I've got a massive wave of life signals approaching fast. At least 30 of them. More than 10 are mutants. They're 500 meters out." We immediately scrambled into position. Li Bo and Zhao Lei held the line on both sides of the main gate, while Zhang Chang went on patrol duty. Li Wei stayed up in the watchtower for real-time tracking, and Wang Wan was on standby at the medical tent. I stood right at the front lines, ready to back them up with my teleportation and spatial powers at a moment's notice. Before long, Boss Hu and his entire crew arrived at our gates. He was driving a heavily modified armored vehicle, with over 30 heavily armed thugs trailing behind him. "Lin Mo, you dared to mess with my guys? Today, I'm going to level this entire base, and slaughter every last one of you." Boss Hu's furious roar echoed across the compound. I just sneered, raising my crossbow and aiming it right at his head. "Come and try it, Hu. My base isn't going down that easily. Today, we'll show you that our crew is not to be messed with." The moment Hu finished shouting, the heavily armored vehicle he was driving slammed the gas and charged straight for our main gate. With a deafening boom, the heavy doors rattled violently. "Fire the ballistas," I screamed at the top of my lungs. Zhang Chang and Li Wei immediately smashed the launch buttons. Several of our makeshift ballistas fired at once, sending a brutal storm of razor-sharp steel bolts raining down on the enemy. Dozens dropped dead instantly, but they just had too many men. They trampled right over their own dead to push forward. A few of them jumped into the trenches, only to get impaled on the jagged steel rebar. It was an absolute bloodbath. 3 mutants breached the trench on the left. Li Wei yelled from the watchtower. I whipped my head around. A massive, heavily muscled brute was wildly swinging a steel pipe, smashing it against the barricades on the wall. It was one of Boss Hu's heavy hitters, a level 2 strength mutant. Li Bo, Zhao Lei, hold them off. The words barely left my mouth when the two of them vaulted onto the wall in unison, activating their own strength powers. They immediately locked into a fierce brawl with the three brutes. Meanwhile, I teleported, blinking right next to the armored truck, and swung a fire axe with everything I had at its tires. Clang! The axe bounced right off. They had actually reinforced the hull of the vehicle. A bald guy stuck his head out the window and gave me a sick, mocking grin. You really think you can stop me with that pathetic trick? Just then, Boss Hu slammed his hand on the button. The machine gun mounted on the armored vehicle started spraying. I instantly teleported, and took cover behind the watchtower. Lin Mo, the main gate can't hold out much longer. I rushed deep into the base and pulled a few packs of explosives from my spatial inventory. I lit the fuses, triggered my teleportation, and instantly materialized right behind the armored vehicle. I slapped the explosives onto its undercarriage. With a deafening boom, the vehicle's rear wheels were blown to pieces, stopping it dead in its tracks. But then Boss Hu charged into the fight himself, and things immediately went from bad to worse. Turns out, he was a Tier 2 Awakened 2, and a super rare enhancement type at that. His skin was tough as iron. Get out of my way. Boss Hu let out a savage roar, slamming a heavy punch right into Zhao Lei's chest. Zhao Lei was sent flying back like a kite with a snapped string. Zhao Lei, I screamed. I teleported over in a flash and dragged him to safety. Wang Wan rushed over immediately to check on his injuries. 2 of his ribs are broken. I have to wrap this up right now. With Zhao Lei down, a massive gap opened up in our wall defenses, and more enemies came flooding in. There were just too many of them, and Zhang Cheng was quickly swarmed. He took a brutal slash to the arm, blood pouring down his sleeve. Zhang Cheng, Li Wei screamed in absolute panic. But he was stuck up in the watchtower calling out warnings, completely unable to help him. I gritted my teeth and pushed my spatial powers to the limit, throwing up several barriers around the enemies. Trapping them just for a moment. Uncle Li, hold the main gate. The second I said that, I teleported to Zhang Cheng, grabbing him and falling back to the medical station. Wang Wan frantically bandaged his wound while Zhang Cheng broke into a cold sweat from the blinding pain. Still, he gritted his teeth and gasped, I'm fine. I can still fight. Right then, Li Wei suddenly yelled, oh no, there are 2 more squads charging us from the rear. They're from the other small bases. They've all teamed up. My heart dropped. I never expected Boss Hu to unite all the surrounding camps. No wonder he was acting so cocky. Suddenly, an enemy seized the opening and lunged right at Wang Wan. He raised his machete for a lethal strike. Watch out, I instantly teleported in front of her, taking the blade with my own body. A blinding wave of agony ripped through my back. Wang Wan's face went deathly pale. She frantically grabbed some coagulant to pack my wound, but I shoved her aside, raising my hand crossbow. And putting that bastard down for good. But deep down, I knew. If this keeps up, our defensive line is going to crumble. It's only a matter of time. The searing pain in my back kept jarring my nerves. Looking at my bleeding teammates all around me, and the endless wave of enemies closing in, the energy inside me began to surge like crazy. Suddenly, a loud buzz echoed in my mind, and an overwhelmingly powerful surge of energy erupted from my core. I felt my sensory range explode outward. The sheer power of my spatial ability felt more violently intense than ever before. My spatial inventory instantly expanded, blowing up from 500 cubic meters straight to 1,000. But more importantly, a brand new ability snapped into my mind. Spatial severing. I focused every ounce of my willpower, and swiped my hand at the leading enemy. An invisible spatial blade instantly slashed right through the air. That enemy's machete was sliced clean in 2. He was so terrified, he just collapsed on the ground. I broke through. It's a Tier 3 spatial ability. I yelled in excitement. With a quick teleport, I appeared right in front of Boss Hu. I swung a spatial blade right at his armored vehicle. Crack! The heavy armor of the vehicle was sliced wide open, leaving a massive gash. You actually broke through to Tier 3. Boss Hu's face went completely pale. He stared at me in absolute disbelief. Scared now? Too late. I let out a cold laugh and glanced over my shoulder. The enemies from those smaller camps saw the sheer power of my Tier 3 abilities. They were already hesitating, terrified to move forward. Boss Hu roared furiously, trying to keep them in line. Get him, all of you. Anyone who steps back, I'll kill you myself. I seized the moment and teleported right behind him. I pressed a spatial blade right against his throat. Boss Hu. Oh wait, I mean, Little Hu. This little game of yours is over. He stiffened up, absolutely petrified to even twitch. Seeing their leader taken down, the surrounding enemies immediately dropped their weapons and fell to their knees. With Boss Hu completely helpless, his entire crew totally fell apart. They were either begging on their knees or turning tail to run. I didn't kill him. Instead, I handed him over to Uncle Lee to keep an eye on. I looked at the kneeling men. If you surrender, we'll take you in. If you want to leave, we won't stop you. But you are never to follow this guy and cause trouble again. After that, I grabbed Zhang Cheng and Uncle Lee, along with a few of the fighters who had surrendered. We headed straight for those two smaller camps that had teamed up against us. They had to pay the price. The first camp wasn't very big. Their defenses were pretty weak. The moment they saw us marching up with Boss Hu's men, their leader was so terrified he threw the gates wide open and surrendered. Turns out, they had been bullied by Boss Hu all along. They were actually forced into this whole attack. I immediately gave them my word. As long as you join us, you'll all be treated fairly. No more twisted power trips or oppression. The survivors in the camp gladly agreed. They handed over control without a fight. But the leader of the second camp? He was a stubborn idiot. He actually tried to put up a fight. So, I just used my spatial cut and sliced their gates wide open. The sheer terror of a tier 3 spatial ability made them completely fold in an instant. The leader's own men tied him up and tossed him to us to deal with. We cleared out the scumbags in the camp and brought together the survivors who wanted to join us. We took them all back to our base. On the way back, I dragged Boss Hu out. I handed him over to the survivors from those two camps. They absolutely despised him for all his abuse. In the end, they decided to banish him from the area, leaving him out there to fend for himself. Once we got back, I pulled the supplies out of my pocket dimension. I handed them out to the new arrivals so they could see we were actually decent people. Wang Wan had already patched up my wounds, along with Zhang Cheng and Zhao Lei. Zhao Lei couldn't do any heavy lifting just yet, but he was finally out of the woods. In the days following the battle, we put everything into settling in the new members. Our base tripled in size. So, I went ahead and completely reorganized the layout. We split it up into living quarters, a supply zone, a training ground, and a medical bay. Among the new members, quite a few have special skills. We've got doctors, engineers, and farmers. With the doctors on board, our medical team's capacity has drastically improved. The engineers started upgrading the base's defenses. Lin Mo, this is bad. I'm sensing a massive cluster of strange life signals deep in the city. The energy feels ice cold. They are purely hostile, and they're spreading toward us fast. My heart sank. A terrible sense of dread washed over me. I immediately called an emergency meeting with the core team. Li Wei broke down the situation. The sheer number of these life signals is massive. There are at least 10,000 of them. They're moving incredibly fast, like mindless monsters. Mutant Zom. I blurted it out. The terrifying disaster from the late stages of my past life's apocalypse. It's actually happening early. We need to get ready right now. I stated grimly. Notify everyone in the base. Halt all non-essential activities. Put everything into reinforcing our defenses. Stockpile enough food and water, and step up the training drills. Especially the tactical coordination for the Awakeners. Everyone nodded in unison. They immediately sprang into action. Standing up on the watchtower, staring at the gloomy, gray sky in the distance, I knew perfectly well. A battle far more brutal than the fight with Boss Hu was coming. But this time, we weren't just a tiny squad anymore. We were a formidable faction with hundreds of members. Li Wei's warning struck everyone's heart like a massive boulder. The entire base instantly shifted into a frenzied state of high alert. The new engineering team was racing against the clock, welding steel plates to add an extra layer of armor to our 8-meter-high walls. I stood on the watchtower, pushing my Tier 3 spatial ability to its absolute limit. Inside my 1,000 cubic meter storage space, I had fuel, explosive charges, crossbow bolts, and other supplies neatly stacked, ready to be deployed to any corner of the battlefield at a moment's notice. Lin Mo, all defensive positions are fully manned. The Awakeners have been split into 3 teams to take shifts on guard duty. I nodded, looking deep into the city. The once gloomy, gray sky was now glowing a horrific dark red. A faint, sickening stench of rot drifted through the air. Li Wei, put push your sensory range out a bit further. Keep a close eye on the horde's speed. Down below the tower, Li Wei squeezed his eyes shut, cold sweat dripping from his forehead. They're still speeding up. They're only 3 kilometers away. The numbers. There are over 20,000 of them. I immediately barked out orders. Everyone, get to your battle stations. Pump the high voltage into the barbed wire fences. Load all the bolt launchers. Get the Molotov cocktails ready. Just as I spoke, the base's warning sirens blared once again. The survivors scrambled to their defensive posts. Half an hour later, Li Wei suddenly roared as he staggered back. They're here. They've hit the outer perimeter. I raised my binoculars. A massive cloud of dark red dust was sweeping toward us, with countless figures writhing inside the haze. It was the mutant zombies. Their bodies were completely rotten. Their skin a sickly, bruised black. Their eyes were clouded over, and foul drool dripped from their jaws. I yelled out, activate the first line of defense. I had only one thought in my mind. Hold this place. Protect everyone. The horde rushed toward the base like a broken dam. The front line of zombies slammed right into the electrified barbed wire, instantly fried by the voltage. Sizzling and burning, they were still twitching as they fell, but the horde behind them felt no fear, trampling over their dead comrades to keep charging forward. Very quickly, a mountain of corpses piled up against the fence, and the high-voltage sparks started to fade. Crossbow turrets, open fire. Zhang Cheng's roar echoed out as several turrets activated at once. Bolts rained down on the horde like a storm, mowing down waves of zombies. But there were just too many of them. The empty gaps were instantly filled. They started bashing against the walls like maniacs. Thud, thud, the heavy impacts made the ground tremble. Oh, no. The left wall is gonna collapse. A survivor's scream pierced my eardrums. I snapped my head around. More than 10 unusually massive zombies were slamming into the wall together. Li Bo, Zhao Lei, go back up the left side. I triggered my teleportation. I formed a spatial blade in my hand and slashed right at the leading giant zombie. Black blood sprayed everywhere, but it didn't even flinch. It kept roaring and smashing into the wall. Just then, Li Bo and Zhao Lei arrived. They both raised their steel rebars and ruthlessly drove them right into the monster's skull. Only then did it crash to the ground. But right at that moment, 3 speedster zombies suddenly darted out of the horde, bypassed the wall, and leapt straight into the base. They were lunging straight for the medical tent. Protect the med bay. I teleported right after them. I swung my spatial blade, and sliced one of their heads clean off. At the same time, I yelled for Zhang Cheng to come back me up. I gasped for air, looking back at the wall. The first line of defense had already been breached. Zombies were crawling in through the cracks. The survivors inside the base were starting to panic. The relentless assault was pushing us into a corner. With just the strength of our base alone, there was no way we could stop 20,000 mutated zombies. I made a split-second decision. Uncle Li, you lead everyone and hold the inner perimeter. Zhang Cheng, Li Wei, and I will break out. We need to contact Qingfeng base. Uncle Li froze for a second, then gave a firm nod. Go, don't worry about us. We will hold the base at all costs. We'll be waiting for you. Wang Wan ran over. She shoved a first aid kit into my hands. Be careful out there. This is a blood coagulant. Use it if things go south. I grabbed the kit. I left them half the explosives I had stored in my spatial pocket. Use these to protect the inner walls. We'll be back as fast as we can. I grabbed Zhang Cheng and Li Wei. We rushed to the hidden exit at the rear of the base. This was the emergency escape route we prepared earlier. I used my spatial cut to slice right through the steel plating on the exit. I'll clear a path with my spatial barrier. Stay close. I focused my powers, projecting a massive spatial barrier right in front of me, and shoved it violently forward. Zhang Cheng activated his speed powers. He dashed ahead, wiping out any zombies that slipped through. Meanwhile, Li Wei kept his sensory powers on full alert. Keeping watch for any danger, we ran for almost an hour. Li Wei suddenly stopped. I'm picking up life signs up ahead. Their energy feels calm. They're from the breeze base. Sure enough, it wasn't long before we spotted several superpowered guards in blue uniforms out on patrol. They were the guards from the breeze base. Hold your fire. We're with Lin Mo's squad. We're here to team up. I yelled, coming to a dead halt. It didn't take long before we were brought to the leader of the breeze base. Everyone just called her sister Chen. Brother Lin Mo. I've already heard about the zombie horde. I was just getting worried about you guys. Our base is under threat from the horde too. I was actually hoping to form an alliance with you. Sister Chen's straightforward nature made teaming up incredibly smooth, and we quickly hashed out a battle plan. The Breeze base would dispatch 50 super-powered fighters and 100 elite survivors, all armed with heavy weapons for backup. In return, we'd provide the supplies and handle the battlefield command, taking full advantage of our reinforced defenses. To crush the zombie horde in a pincer attack. Half an hour later, the two squads linked up and marched straight for our base. Sister Chen even brought along a few homemade cannons. That was exactly the kind of lifeline we desperately needed right now. Lin Mo, don't you worry. Everyone at the Breeze base has stared death in the face. We absolutely won't drop the ball on this. Sister Chen said, giving my shoulder a firm pat. I nodded back at her. Looking over the super-powered fighters in their ranks. Some could control fire, while others could manipulate water. It was a perfect match to back up our own abilities. As we got close to the base, we could hear the deafening sounds of a brutal fight breaking out inside. The cracks in the perimeter wall had ripped even wider. The horde had already pushed through to our second line of defense. We can't wait any longer. Launch the counterattack, right now. I barked out the orders. Zhang Chang, Ji Wei, take the speed-type fighters. Flank them from the left and use the Molotovs to build a wall of fire. To cut off the horde's reinforcements. Sister Chen, you lead the fire squad to hit the main horde. Lin Mo, we're launching a counterattack from the inside. We're catching them in a pincer attack. Everyone, move out, now. I fired up my teleportation, warping straight into the base with a few of our fighters. I screamed at the top of my lungs, we're back. Reinforcements are here. Hearing that, the survivors inside the base instantly erupted into wild cheers. With morale surging, Lin Mo led the core fighters in a ferocious charge, wiping out the zombies that had crawled into the base one by one. Sister Chen's fire abilities were an absolute massacre on the battlefield, reducing the undead to blazing corpses. I stood right at the top of the perimeter wall, unleashing my Tier 3 spatial abilities to the absolute limit. Countless spatial blades rained down on the swarming horde. By dusk, as the final mutated zombie collapsed into the roaring flames. The 20,000-strong zombie horde had finally been beaten back by our combined forces. The outside of the base was piled high with rotting corpses, their pitch-black blood soaking deep into the earth. I jumped down from the wall, looking around at my crew. Uncle Lee's arm had been slashed by a zombie, and was now wrapped up in thick bandages. Zhang Chang had completely burned out his speed abilities, sitting slumped on the ground, gasping for air. Wang Wan's face was smeared in dirt and blood, but she was still frantically treating the wounded. Sister Chen was leaning heavily against a barricade, the homemade cannon in her hands still smoking hot. I walked over and handed her a bottle of water. Sister Chen, seriously, thank you guys so much for this. At the same time, Sister Chen and I came to an agreement. We would share our supplies and tech, and protect the survivors in this area together. Thanks to the strength and sincerity our base showed during the battles, we attracted more of the smaller survivor groups nearby to join us. The base grew 10 times in size, becoming the biggest survivor faction in the city. We completely reorganized the zones. Now, we don't just have proper living areas, we've also expanded our farms. We even built small factories, and started making our own weapons and everyday supplies. Standing up here on the watchtower, I can sense the life signals of everyone around me. So warm, so vibrantly alive. It's so full of hope. The despair and agony of my past life have long since faded away. In this life, I didn't just manage to keep my family safe.